То, что Бог будет наказывать, будут великие знания.
That we would be faced by God's wrath, that there would be war, earthquakes, and death. That was predicted in the book of the Apocalypse. Today, we are witnesses to just that. These disasters and catastrophes follow one after another. But we are becoming used to it. It doesn't shock us anymore. I cannot accept this state of affairs. That's why I began to write this opera, which I have called Holy Communion for the Non-Believer, where I look to the fundamentals of our society, to the root causes of its malaise. I attempt to find a way out. I'm fascinated by the end of the 20th century. In these changing times, I want to open people's eyes, although as yet I possess no answers. The Russian poet Khlebnikov put it more succinctly. He said that we have to create, to sow eyes that will enable us to see. Yet today there are less and less of these clear, unclouded eyes. They have been clouded with indifference. Maybe people simply don't want to see anymore. Maybe they fear doomsday. Or are people just tired of their souls being mauled with hopes and then with failures, with another set of hopes followed by more failures? All of us have hoped and failed over and over again, 1,000 times. Now we are beginning to hope again, but it's becoming too much for us.
I've worked here for 18 years, but only because with the job there comes a flat. Otherwise, I would have left ages ago. Here, the management doesn't think that we need any free days. With only one free day a week, when do we see our children? How much housekeeping can I do? We don't even get paid for extra days. We're worn out. Look at the conditions that we have to work in, the filth, this oily dust. And then they expect us to throw these parts around, but each one of them weighs 30 kilos.
But can you take this?
Look at the muscles I've developed. Not every woman can stand this. Only the strongest remain.
But do you think this is a job for women?
Of course not. It's purely physical. Surely the fact is that we have a shortage of men. We even have some men on these lines, but the pace was too much for them. They couldn't stand the pace. They left. We should be proud of these 700 women. Although at the same time, I pity them. They try their hardest to retain their femininity, but physically, they're edging closer. They're changing from women into men.
So the workers have a good case.
But why strike? We live in a great country. We're free people in a free country. We're free to say what we like. We're free to think what we like. We're free to do as we like. Nobody's oppressed. We're free to talk about anything.
Yes, but talking doesn't change a thing. The air is still poisoned, the work is still heavy.
How can I explain it? The work has to be done. The 250, the 280 rubles a month has to be earned. If there is a little anger, take it as a natural female trait.
Everybody laughed at us. All the other factories had their weekends off, but we were forced to work. We started the strike with one aim in mind. It was a demand to work only 8 unpaid Saturdays a year. That was on the banner. Then one of the managers rushed out and tried to tear up that banner. We were disgusted. What right did he have to do that? But he shouted at us, "What do you think, organizing strikes and meetings? Have you forgotten that you are living in socialism?" And he carried on like that. So I asked him, "Why does the factory across the road work only 2 Saturdays, but we work 21? Do we have different laws?" And he said, "In my factory, I make the rules." Then we told him straight that it wasn't his factory, it's our factory. Our factory.
In 1967, after a miners' strike, 12 people were shot. Didn't that possibility frighten you?
Of course, the people have this fear. They tried to frighten me, they gave me warnings. There were reprisals. All last month and all this month, bonuses were stopped. And just because I participated in the strike.
So, was it worth it?
Yes, of course it was. Look, it's not a question of money. Today, that's the least of my worries. Between you and me, when we discuss it, we say it's a fight between the old and new.
I was really on edge. Our demand was straightforward, not more than 8 Saturdays. We'd come to the point when we had to say what we thought. Too much had piled up over the years. They treated us like shit. How do they expect us to work when for most of the month there is nothing to produce? And then at the end of the month, the director just wants work, work, work.
But you were quiet for so long.
But even now, if we talk openly, we still have this fear. We still don't know how they will react.
Did that calm you down?
No, we have to fight to the end, so that actually our conditions improve, so that our pay packets are fatter. Because the way we live now is just crazy. I feel like spitting and saying, "Sod you."
Rubbish. We're forced to make rubbish.
But why do you manufacture rubbish? Why don't you stop the belt?
No, we can't do that because they will stop our bonuses or punish us in some other way. The management just wants the belt to turn. All they want is their empty figures to add up. Despite the quality, they get paid for fulfilling the plan. We're treated like slaves. We're their pawns. They can change the figures as they want. They can pay us what they like. And even now, when we protested, they fucked us around.
But how come?
We gain nothing.
Why?
Because when we came to the final vote about how many Saturdays should be worked, they arranged that there will be a majority of their delegates.
But what about the unions? Surely they are your representatives.
Who the hell knows where they are? Our votes don't count. The management decides who will get what position. The management does the voting for the union. The management will choose only those who will do their bidding.
So you lost. At the vote, the decision was to have 40 unpaid Saturdays.
We've lost this fight, but not the war. As stone has begun to roll, if they continue to ignore us, then next year the conflict will be greater.
So something has changed.
Yes, we've changed, but not those who've been in those comfy chairs for such a long time. I doubt if they'll change. Unfortunately, we aren't capable of much after these many years of silence. We're not even used to straight talking. We've forgotten how to talk. Today, we might have lost our fears, but as yet we don't have this inner sense of freedom. It will take years to regain that.
Here, all this reminds me of hell, and you like its queen.
I think I'm closer to Cinder's at the beginning of the story. Poor and dirty.
Without the prince.
Certainly. Cinder's lived with her stepmother, and I am forced to live in a hostel.
But does Cinder's have any moments of joy?
Yes, I love to read, especially science fiction.
Этнографический коллектив из Томска. Окно в природу. У нашего микрофона кандидат биологических наук Леопольд Семашко.
Интересная пора наступила сейчас в природе страны. Это не только осень, так принято считать такое время по календарю, а тем более по старому, по которому ноябрь начинается только...
Straight after the accident, there were 180,000 volunteers. Of course, we couldn't take everybody. Well, firstly, we needed specialists, professionals with a degree of experience in this matter. There were many who wanted to be here simply to help, without any concern about their safety. Maybe we still have this within us, this feeling that if there is a catastrophe, everyone will pitch in. Let's take my case. Why did I come here? I saw this as a war in which it was my duty to participate. But there is another side to it. I wanted to test myself, and yes, I wanted to actually experience these events.
I wonder if you remember Tardovsky's words. If the war has started, then to war you go.
15,000 volunteers worked here and the army. All of them fought the radiation with their bare hands. But I think such an effort is only possible in this country.
Of course, no other nation understands this. When the chief advisor of the French nuclear industry came here, he unofficially said, if something like this had happened in France, then everybody would have taken their bags and run off. I believe him. All the womanizers are scared of coming here, and we know what the French are like.
But I couldn't say that the Russian men are known for their abstinence.
In this zone, our men say that even 1,000 units of radioactivity will not destroy their manliness.
The first 6 months after the accident was a special time. Suddenly, there was a different relationship between the people here, and their attitude to work was completely different. It could become a true example for our society as a whole. Nobody here was indifferent. Unfortunately, now it has all changed, although on the surface everything is the same. There's a different type of person here. They're beginning to calculate how to work less and receive more.
But why has everything changed so much?
I suppose because last summer we were successful in halting the main source of the radiation. That calmed everybody down. The idea that it is still highly dangerous to be here, that idea has vanished. The time for heroes is over. Today's volunteers are drawn here by the wages, by the fact that they are 3 or 5 times as high as normal. They also get a special document stating that they have worked here. It's now a question of prestige in the Soviet Union that you can say that you have worked in Chernobyl. Our propaganda machine is partly at fault in this, because it continually emphasized that only real men work here. But the real heroes are no longer with us. Most were forced to go, as they had already received the maximum permissible dose of radiation.
Even though these valuable icons are radioactive, there are still those who do not fear to collect them.
Many of the surrounding villages are losing their heritage. See, even radioactivity doesn't stop people taking these things. For instance, this silver jug has 2,500 rads of beta radiation. The icons, as we say, are also unclean.
So it seems that the stolen icon, instead of bringing happiness and contentment, will bring death.
Yes, it's terrible that such a holy item will bring death. It won't happen immediately, but over time. It's the children that will suffer. We can only guess what kind of icons there have been in this vicinity. Look what fine workmanship, just in this frame. Only a week ago there was a picture in this frame. They don't take the frames. There are thieves among the workers. During the night they break into the empty homes, they see what's there, and then when the shifts change, which happens every 15 days, they're away with the stolen goods.
Aren't you scared of touching these things?
I wash my hands every time. Above all, I wanted to show you the most valuable piece. I've named it the Madonna of Chernobyl. I found it lying in the mud. Somebody must have dropped it in the rush. I feel that she is a symbol of the fate of these people. These colors, dark red and jet black, somehow were already ominous.
Oh dear, they've caught up with me. Oh God, what's going to happen now?
Aren't you worried that the water is radioactive?
Tell me who put it there.
How long have you been down?
Since the autumn.
This or last year?
No, I've been here since last autumn.
And you've been drinking this water all the time?
Of course. Here, nobody does any thinking. Those generals, they just sit here, collect their huge wages, and continue to cordon off this 30-kilometer area. They take the best houses, but we can take a run and jump.
But the television showed that you were given proper housing outside the danger zone.
That box is full of rubbish. It's full of tricksters. Even the newspapers are full of facts about what we who have suffered are supposed to have received. If I could get hold of Gorbachev, I'd give him a caning. Those that are well off he visits, but he doesn't set a foot here where we are suffering. Do you think that I would try and run away from a good life? On my way back, I spent 2 weeks in the forest with my cow in tow. There was nothing to eat or drink, but I had to return.
But how did you get into this zone? Didn't anybody stop you?
They didn't see us. In the forest, we were like partisans. We, the old, are made to suffer. They didn't give us proper homes, and we can't really live here. Imagine what I have had to experience in my old age. The fields here have been ploughed with our hands, the houses built with our bare hands. We fought the war, but still I have to walk and beg. Oh, dear, I think that already I have said too much. They'll come and arrest me.
What are you waiting for? The buses surely don't run anymore.
We're waiting for them to bring the bread.
How long have you been waiting?
This is the 5th day, but they've promised it for today. What are they doing? Checking the radiation again? No, they're taking photos.
Aren't you scared of death? Surely there's still radiation here.
No, we're not scared of death. It won't take us so easily.
We were evacuated, but there was also radiation on the other side of Kiev. There was radiation in Belarusia. There the people remained.
It's not like a stone on which you can trip. But here there was a cloud. It came and went, and the air is clear again.
Today it's the rage to blame the radiation. When you cough, it's the fault of radiation. If you have a headache or an upset stomach, what do you blame? Radiation, of course.
America keeps on repeating that because there was some bad cloud, the soil is going to be harmful. Our local leadership still doesn't want us to go into the fields. What do we care what America or anybody else thinks? America doesn't send us any potatoes. So we plant our potatoes and we eat them, because we still have to survive.
We are used to surviving. We survived the famine after the war, so we'll survive this too.
Some didn't leave at all. There are 2 people who never left. They haven't died. They're living as they have always lived.
Ой, Господи, Господи, не дай Бог.
Today's programme is devoted to the first of two special reports from the Soviet Union, a superpower where staple foods are still on ration. In the West, Mikhail Gorbachev is a hero whose policies have changed the world. The Berlin Wall has crumbled, Eastern Europe is redefining itself, and the arms race has gone into reverse. But at home, time is running out for Mr. Gorbachev, as this week's demonstrations in Lithuania have shown only too clearly. He has to convince the Soviet people that his reforms will work and that the economy will recover. But the daily reality is empty food shelves. Meat is rationed, milk unobtainable, and vegetables rotten, all of which is fueling unrest. Ian Breach has been to the Volgograd region, and this is the first of his two reports on why Russia cannot feed itself.
The Russian Revolution was about food. It was about freedom too, of course. But Lenin's best remembered slogan in the Great Uprising of 1917 was just three simple words: peace, bread, and land. The farms were to be efficiently developed by the people and for the people. Famine and shortage would give way to ample harvests. Peace and prosperity would follow. But 73 years on, and as a new revolution sweeps the Soviet Union, only peace has been achieved. Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of perestroika or reconstruction won't work unless his government can rescue an agricultural system that's in ruins. Until now, Soviet farms have all been run, under the direct control of Moscow bureaucrats, as massive outdoor factories. Civil servants, not farmers, have dictated what would be grown and how it would be grown, with peasants heroically following instructions and struggling to meet quotas. It's been a formula for failure. President Gorbachev and his supporters now acknowledge that the revolutionary ideal of centrally planned, collectivized farming just doesn't work. A country that could be self-sufficient is unable to provide its people with an adequate or a proper diet. If the farming policies, which were central to communist strategy, have failed so dramatically, then the inevitable conclusion must be that the ideology itself is collapsing. A nation that put the first man in space, one that's matched the military might of the West, is now in desperate economic straits in spite of massive cuts in the defense budget. The USSR, bounteously endowed with natural resources, is short of almost all the consumer goods its people want, especially good food, and their patience is wearing thin.
Gorbachev himself has made it clear that solutions to problems cannot occur overnight. It's going to take a long time before perestroika actually has some positive effect in the rural economy. The major problem that Gorbachev has is of convincing not only the rural population, but the Soviet population generally, that to reap the benefits of perestroika, they must wait probably at least a decade.
4 years ago, when President Gorbachev was setting out his political reforms, ordinary Russian citizens may well have believed that an economic transformation would soon follow. But it hasn't. The situation's worsened, and the people in the universal and interminable queues are disillusioned and resentful. Decent food is practically unavailable. It's not that Russians are starving, simply that what they do get is poor in quality and rich in starch. 1 person in 5 is officially obese, so stodgy is the diet. And Gorbachev's ideal, to get 80 kilos of meat a year onto each table, looks remote in spite of the massive sums spent on grain imports. With or without the new policies of glasnost or openness, consumers know things could and should be better. Shopping is everywhere a primitive test of patience. It's common to spend 2 hours a day queuing for food that would be rejected in Western shops. When it is available, it's expensive and there's no choice. Food rationing is widespread, and some Western experts on Soviet agriculture believe the scarcity of food, especially meat, could be the most potent factor in Russian politics over the next year or so.
In some parts of the Soviet Union, the problem will be really very hard for some people. Not for everybody, but it's some of the big industrial centers, for instance. Those people who do not have connections or special ways of getting food will be in a very bad position. The main item, as Gorbachev said, is meat. Meat is more than just the food, it's a symbol of a well-being. I would guess it's a 50-50 chance for Gorbachev to remain in power and to be able to reap the long-term effects of his perestroika and of his reforms. I do believe in an improvement in the long term, but what he needs is a short-term success.
Much of rural Russia looks and is like the Third World. To transform the economy, to produce the food he so desperately needs to stay in office, Gorbachev must confront problems of awesome scale in the countryside. Backward, ramshackle, denied the investment that for decades has gone into industry and military development, the villages have also lost large sections of their most precious asset, young people. For the ones who remain, perestroika so far means no more to them than the hardline communism it's replaced. The shops are still bare of all but essentials, and often those too. Frequently there's no sugar to be had, no matches. Talk of introducing private enterprise doesn't easily impress people who clearly remember peasants being shot for doing just that. Gorbachev has to convince them by his actions that things really have changed.
I think it's very much a question of trust in the countryside. The most sweeping proposals, which are basically for a reversal of collectivization, for an introduction of leaseholding and so on, these unquestionably fit in with what's required for the Soviet agricultural sector. That is to say, above all, to restore the link, the ownership link between farmers and the land they work. However, there is so much mistrust in the countryside after what has happened, after all the appalling things that have been wrought on Soviet agriculture and farming, obviously the brutalities of collectivization, the veering switches in policy under Khrushchev, that they simply don't believe, perhaps, that these reforms are here to stay now. And they'll need, I think, time before people are really convinced.
The Russian Revolution was about seizure of the land from its feudal owners and its redistribution to the peasant workers. But the replacement of serfdom with freedom was a hasty, improvised affair, desperately unequal to the scale of deprivation. 100 million were living at the edge of starvation. They farmed a freezing land for many months of the year, oppressed by the climate, the soil, and the official regime, all of which were harsh and unyielding. By early 1917, the peasants were paying the price for a government that had been humiliated in military ventures from Europe to the Far East. Shortages of food and supplies had worsened during the First World War. The land was in profound distress. Rural life was medievally brutish and bleak. But the revolution did nothing to relieve the misery. On the contrary, it was a bitter betrayal of the peasants' hopes and ambitions. The founding of the Soviet state, a union of councils designed to rule and represent the people, was not a popular revolution. What followed was to be as turbulent and devastating as the revolution of 1917 itself. Within months, the country was pitched into a civil war that lasted 3 years. Warring factions of the left and right clashed not only with each other, but with regional groups fighting for local independence. And there was another army. Millions of dispossessed peasants, their food requisitioned by troops, their children homeless, racked with famine, sick. The situation was at its most appalling in the Ukraine. In Britain today, there are 18,000 Ukrainians, emigres or the descendants of those who fled the terror of civil war and wholesale slaughter. In the early 20s, when Luko Reis was a young man, the Ukraine was struggling to restore food production under Lenin's new economic policy.
Было хозяйство, все были разоренные. Уже не стало ни продуктов, ничего. Так, чтобы и Россия, Україна то вона могла ще існувати, вона ще жила. Але Росія вже вона вже була так би в судорогах голодової смерті. І тоді Ленін завел новую экономическую политику, которая дала свободу всем хозяйствам.
In the Ukraine, farming thrived for a period after the Civil War, but this was the calm before a terrifying storm. The Communist Party tolerated a kind of free enterprise because they needed the food. Joseph Stalin had maneuvered his way into power after Lenin's death. He opposed independence for the peasants, arguing that this was a luxury the country couldn't afford. A program of industrialization and rearmament had to take priority. This policy, pushed through with political savagery, was promoted on the basis that the Soviet Union had to be capable of withstanding any invasion or threat from capitalist countries. It laid the foundations of a manufacturing strategy that would ruin the country's economy and result in genocide, as grain confiscated from the peasants was exported to finance the plan. Villagers and peasants were forced to yield up their small holdings and join collectives. The most prosperous were punished as kulaks, or farming bourgeoisie, and exiled or murdered. Village meetings became assemblies of hatred, fear, and violence. As Stalin's hold on the country and the party tightened, so the farmers were starved on their own land, alienated ever since from the soil that supported them.
Ukraine, of course, was the most agriculturally important part of the Soviet Union in the 1920s, and indeed in the pre-revolutionary period as well. And the scale of atrocity there was considerable. But it also extended, for example, into Kazakhstan, where nomadic herdsmen were literally rounded up. And if they didn't join collectives, then they were either physically annihilated or sent to Siberia. The tactics used throughout the Soviet Union in terms of trying to ensure collectivization were also horrific. For example, the practice of burning down one village in order to ensure that the other collectivized, or starving a village of water in order to ensure that it collectivized. So it clearly is a horrific period in Soviet history.
Rural communities across the Ukraine were exterminated in Stalin's scorched earth assault. The people's physical roots were torn up or burned first, and famine followed. It's a story of enslavement and futile insurrection.
Когда началась коллективизация, то наступление на фермеров, то я стал так организовывать такую боевую единицу, чтобы, так бы мовити, оказать сопротивление, может быть, будут все. Бо тогда было настроение такое, что если бы было оружие, то бы каждый взял бы оружие тогда, але ж этого не было.
In the Ukraine, Stalin's forces had requisitioned everything they could lay their hands on. Peasants died where they dropped, starved by a government that was demanding more food from the collectives than they produced. Desperate but hopeless attempts to survive by eating dogs, cats, rats, weeds, even leather, are part of a nightmare only now becoming documented, but far from fully acknowledged even under Glasnost. The Bolshevik determination to collectivize cost millions of lives.
The worst possible estimates that Western commentators have given of the deaths caused either directly or indirectly as a result of collectivization, and figures range from say 5 to 6, 7 million, are possibly on the conservative side. And there's no evidence to suggest that the human misery and cost in terms of death death through famine, malnutrition, was far higher.
Село Пірки, это близко вже від моєго хутора, полумертвое. 40% населения тоже змерло. І пустки стоять, хати порозорювані, таке страшне видіння, що я ужахнувся, когда все это увидел. И люди изменились, стали невеселые, сумные люди, песни прекратились, так бы мовить, люди изменили свою, так бы мовить, психическую натуру.
Growing up at that time, and in the famine area, was a little boy called Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev. Born of a farming family, he was steeped in the world of agriculture before assuming his present status.
As a first party secretary, and now president, of course, Gorbachev is unique in that he spent all his career before becoming first party secretary in 1985 in agriculture. He spent his early career in Stavropol Krai in the North Caucasus, a relatively rich agricultural region. And the North Caucasus during the 50s and 60s was a time in which agricultural production was reasonably successful, certainly in comparison to most other parts of the Soviet Union. So he has that experience of agriculture. But secondly, he has an education in agriculture, again, which makes him unique. He studied law, first of all, at Moscow State University in the early 1950s. And then when he returned to Stavropol Krai in the mid-1950s, he took a correspondence course in agricultural economics.
Такая постановка вопроса диктуется реальной ситуацией, сложившейся в стране общими задачами перестройки.
Gorbachev knows what has to be done, and in spring last year he announced sweeping reforms, acknowledging the gross mistakes made in the 20s and for the following half-century. He's said to have reread Lenin's speeches on the new economic policy before laying his proposals before the Central Committee of the Communist Party. The reforms included dismantling the vast state agriculture bureaucracy, the leasing of land to individuals, and an end to price fixing. Gorbachev's main political opponent is Yegor Ligachev, member in charge of agriculture. A Stalinist, seen as one of the hardline conservatives, he could thwart or seriously weaken the reforms. He speaks for those who are uneasy about the scale and pace of proposed changes, those who believe the old communism would work, given time. But for all these reservations in the Presidium, there appears to be widespread support for Gorbachev's overall strategy.
There is, I think, general agreement on his analysis. Where the arguments really exist is over the means required to tackle them. The conservative bloc in this country believes still that the collective solution is the right solution, it just needs to be operated more efficiently. Mr. Gorbachev and his supporters say, no, basically it hasn't delivered the goods and we've got to think about changing it very radically. And that is the basic political clash which agriculture is at the center of.
It's plain to most observers that those symbols of the country's struggle, the heroic peasants devoted to peaceful labor, are empty symbols. Socialism as developed since Lenin hasn't worked. Managers of the collectives and state farms are usually more dedicated to the party than they are to solving the farming crisis. An order from Moscow may pass across 200 desks before it reaches any farm. As for productivity, the average collective is said to generate half a ton of paper a year. Even on this comparatively well-run collective, 150 miles north of Volgograd, bureaucracy sits like a stone on its operations. This pig farm near Krasnaya Partizan, 500 miles south of Moscow, typifies what's wrong with Soviet agriculture. Run down, inefficient, ill-equipped to survive hard winters and baking summers. It's primitive, unattractive, neglected. To run places like this, even by the poorest standards of Western Europe, requires a massive diversion of national finance and an injection of political will for people to operate such farms on their own and for themselves. The kolkhozes and sovkhozes, the collectives and the state farms aren't used to self-determination.
Kolkhozes and sovkhozes for many years were just told what to produce. They were told what prices they will receive. For instance, a kolkhoz or kolkhoz could not say, dairy farming is a lost business. On our farm, we want to cease with dairy farming, and instead we want to do something else. They had to fulfill plans, whether it was to their advantage or not. So this creates a mentality which, by a number of people also in the West, is called the command farming mentality. This applies from the simple worker up to the managers of the farms and even to the administration of a district. This creates this mentality of not looking for the most economical way of production.
If currency barriers can be relaxed and Russia is freer to trade with the West, both for manufactured goods and industrial equipment, one pressing and crucial problem might be alleviated relatively quickly. That's the appalling waste that takes place between farm and shop, estimated at between 30 and 40% of all food production. Milk and cheese are lost in vast quantities because roads are poor, transport unreliable, and refrigeration rare. Most dairy products go sour before they're sold. Perestroika down on the farm has to take lessons from abroad.
In France, the early vegetables in southern France along the Rhone are harvested in the evening or during the day and are transported during the night, redistributed at Paris, Rungis, and are sold the other morning. In the Soviet Union, this is absolutely impossible. It takes a number of days and maybe even take more than one redistribution.
Private markets, now to be seen in larger towns and cities all over Russia, allow individual stallholders to sell their own produce on sites and in covered halls regulated by the state. There's a minimum of bureaucracy, an air of freedom and genuine enterprise, and an absence of everyone's favorite enemy, the middleman. They solve some of the problems of distribution and offer greater choice and quality, though prices are higher. A kilo of tomatoes can cost a day's pay. But private markets are an important stage in Gorbachev's plans for reforming the food and agriculture setup without abandoning socialism. In part 2 of Swords into Plowshares next week, Countryfile visits a typical village in rural Russia. Social conditions there lag far behind those in the West. President Gorbachev recognizes that he must improve day-to-day life for farm workers before they'll help him to keep his promise to feed the rest of the nation properly and raise standards as a whole. To succeed, perestroika and the new reforms must be supported by everyone in the USSR. But the peasants are so alienated and apathetic that the chances of success are slim.
Matter of fact, I'm accustomed to empty shells. It's not anything so fascinating.
But you've seen it on television.
But no, I mean, it's quite often it is now on our TV. But what was actually amazing, that conversation with this young person, a young boy who has no ideas, who has no belief anymore, who has no ideals anymore. This is really terrible, I would say. And if it shows now so openly on TV, it's a big question to all generations, to all the people over how could it actually happen.
Kostya,
and this is a pain.
Well, not shocks. Actually, I used to it because, well, among my friends you can see the same.
But to a Soviet viewer, what is surprising? What's the most powerful image there?
Well, yes, I think empty shelves in the shop, because you can see it in real life, but in the shop on the screen, it's something striking you.
I can't agree. I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Please, you know, of course.
The empty shelves is not everything. I think the moral situation, the ideals, you know, the belief in future of the country is more important at the moment. Because we can survive a few years with some shortage, you know, I believe it can But if there is no ideas for the future, if there is no direction where to move, this is more difficult.
Jim, do you think they started this greater honesty, showing more of the realism, more of everyday Soviet life in order to act as a safety valve, give them the safety valve?
I think partially, yes.
Is it going to have that effect?
I think it could have that effect, but as with all safety valves, they can overheat, they can become the means whereby an explosion actually takes place. I mean, I'd like to take up what Lena was saying just now, that for me certainly the most shocking, surprising, saddest element there was that boy talking about just wanting to go to America. And that ties in exactly with the clip of the exhibition about Stalin. But once again, we come back to this idea that it was an exhibition showing the falsification of the history of the party. No, it's not. It's an exhibition showing the history of the party. And the problem is that there are so many people alive in the Soviet Union now who gave their lives for that sort of thing. What are now the young people to believe in?
Can we just stop it there for a moment and just move on? We'll obviously come back to these subjects in a minute. It didn't need Lenin to tell the Russians that children were their biggest asset and brightest hope for the future. But what did they do about it? For a long time, the generation gap didn't officially exist in the Soviet Union. But now many Russians are acknowledging the effects of it. People are asking who's to blame for problems such as youth crime and homelessness. According to some statistics, the average Soviet mother spends no more than 17 minutes a day with her child, 3 or 4 times less than she spends on doing the shopping.
День, когда исполнилось мне 16 лет, подарила мама мне вязаный жакет и куда-то в сторону отвела глаза. Принесли посылку мне.
Эти ребята тоже не раз убегали из дома. Одни, не находя понимания, любви, сочувствия своей же семье. Другие от скуки, классных уроков, невозможности найти общий язык с учителем. Третьи просто в поисках так необходимой мальчишкам романтики. Дома они чувствовали себя ненужными. Школа старалась поскорее от них избавиться, и оставалась улица. Дворовая компания, где, казалось бы, и защитят, и поймут, но могут и толкнуть на скользкий путь, который ведет сначала в детскую комнату милиции, а затем и сюда, за глухой забор.
А чего из дома-то побежал?
Сестра старшая дерется ногами.
Ногами дерется? За что?
Ну, когда мать скажет что-нибудь ей сделать, я делаю что-нибудь до конца не доделаю, потом она давай орать на меня.
Не в моготу тебе стало?
Угу.
Ну а мама-то с папой как к тебе относится, хорошо?
У меня отца нет, мать такая.
Roll on the Holidays, a program for teenagers, mixes satire with extracts from feature films to illustrate what really happens in Soviet households.
Итак, дано. У нас 2 команды. Команда номер 1 фигурирует в народе под общим названием «предки» и включает в себя, собственно, родителей. То есть папу, маму, бабушку и дедушку, и очень старших сестер и братьев. Основной лозунг на знамени этой команды: «Ох уж не та нынче молодежь» или «А вот мы в ваше время». Далее может упоминаться любая область жизненной деятельности человека, включая интимные отношения и производственную деятельность.
Меня, к примеру, отец порол до 17 лет.
Да что вы.
Крепко порол.
А толку никакого.
А ты кончай с этими Катями. У тебя 10 класс на носу, вот о чем надо думать.
Пусть он мне скажет, ты старый осел, ты жил не так, я буду жить по-другому, я пойму, пусть он скажет. Но ведь он же молчит. Пусть вообще уходит из дому, но он же молчит. Пользуется всем, молчит.
Все. Не пущу. Никуда я тебя не пущу. Это порочная семья и порочная девчонка. Мы повяжем тебя веревками, цепями, но мы спасем тебя, дурака, от этой девки.
Наше дело.
Дедушка, ты не волнуйся.
Да не могу я не волноваться.
У нас прекрасная молодежь. Можно сказать, героическая. Я каждый день смотрю телевизор и уверяю вас, что очень хорошо знаю нашу молодежь.
Вторая команда известна в народе под названием «Детки» и включает в себя сыновей, дочек, братишек, сестренок, а также внуков и внучек представителей вышеназванной команды «Предки». Основной лозунг на знамени второй команды – «Не учите нас жить» или «А что вы делали?» Далее упоминается любой период развития страны, начиная с предреволюционных волнений и кончая эпохой застоя.
Родители сейчас пошли какие-то ненадежные. А я на своих не жалуюсь. Тебе повезло. А мои живут как кошка с собакой.
Я мечтаю быть очень красивой, чтобы нравиться всем мужчинам. И еще я хочу ехать в красивой спортивной машине, чтобы на мне был длинный алый шарф, а на сиденье рядом магнитофон и маленькая собачка.
Основной принцип моего существования – служение гуманистическим идеалам человечества. Я спрашиваю, кофе еще хочешь?
Тогда уж с ликером.
А ведь, оказывается, мы бедняки.
Неправда, мы богатые. Люди без денег могут быть очень богатыми.
Нас теперь воспитывать положено. Долго и упорно. А если жениться? Ну, к примеру, обольщу вашу дочь, женюсь на ней. И дело, можно сказать, в шляпе. У вас и связи имеются, и денежки водятся. Не захотите же вы сделать несчастной жизнь единственной дочери. Найдете же возможно, в институт меня пристроить, и тепленькое местечко выхлопотать, и квартиру постараюсь купить. А, Агнеса Ивановна?
Итак, задача. За как можно более короткие сроки найти точки соприкосновения между представителями обеих команд с целью устранения возможности возникновения конфронтации, ну, а если кому повезет, то заключить договор о дружбе и сотрудничестве на вечные времена.
The path from petty theft and juvenile delinquency to serious crime and imprisonment is featured in another youth program, Up to 16 and Over.
Подростковую преступность, пожалуй, можно назвать барометром социального и нравственного состояния общества. Барометром, который остро реагирует на все болезненные процессы, происходящие в нашей жизни. Стоило, например, в последние годы обостриться имущественному неравенству в нашем обществе, как тут же резко возросло число осужденных в воспитательно-трудовых колониях за совершенные кражи, разбои и грабежи. Это понятно, ведь реакция молодых на одни и те же явления всегда более острая, чем у взрослых, которые заставляют сдерживаться опыт, возраст, боязнь потерять то, что они имеют. Ты читала рассказ Аркадия Гайдара «Горячий камень»? Если бы ты нашла этот горячий камень, ты начала бы жизнь свою снова?
Я бы начала ее сама. Снова все сначала.
These children explain how they've fallen into the clutches of older youths already operating in the black market, and that in turn leads to dealings with the Soviet mafia.
Что за ребята? И вы в том числе?
Руками ребят.
Совсем?
Старше нас.
Так, и чем они занимаются?
Ну, таких, как мы, бывает, заставляют на них это работать. У иностранцев спрашивают жвачки, и им половину отдавать.
Ну, а сколько лет этим ребятам?
17 лет. Есть после армии приходят.
Да, это ребята более серьезные, они не размениваются на значки, жевательную резинку и сигареты.
А есть связь вот между теми ребятами, с которых мы начинали, вот этими маленькими ребятами, и вот этими уже взрослыми? Или вы предлагаете?
Ну, связь, видимо, прямая. На вот показанном можно, наверное, убедиться, к чему впоследствии можно прийти, начиная от жевательной резинки и заканчивая вот этими шкатулками и икрой.
Kostya, although the problems of the family were treated here in a slightly light-hearted way, would this have been seen to a Soviet audience as entertaining?
This problem does exist and have been existing always, the generation gap. And now it's taken some unusual forms.
I wanted to say actually not an entertainment. It's a big pain to watch all this. And unfortunately, at the moment, I'm sorry to say, but it's very close to the life. And at the moment, we can't show much positive things about our youth.
But would people want to watch it? This is what I'm trying to
I
get
think
at.
they should watch it, even if they don't want. Some of them want to escape, because this is their children, this is their future, this is everything, what otherwise they live for. And it's really painful to look, I mean, to see how these young people destroying their own lives without, you know, and just these crimes, I believe, is a part of reflecting of social problems, because it's something was missing in their education, and they're brought up. And I mean, this is one of the first things we really had to change and think about. If it will be, if we lose these young people, and if they will go other direction, there is no future for the country.
Jim, can I stop you there for just say, is this entertainment or is this factual television? And can we get away from television with a message at all?
I'm not sure we can. I think the message is very direct. It is about young people, and Lena, I think, is quite right that the message here is extremely painful. It is, again, evidence of the fact that Soviet society is not giving anything at the moment to its young.
All this grew up in Soviet society while nobody was mentioning anything about it. I mean, the mafia isn't something new, for instance, but is this shocking to viewers? Kostya?
I think the average people, they like to see this because they know that our kids, they are in the bedroom, for example, reading, or they're visiting school, and we have nothing to do with them. And maybe it's painful for some people like Lena, or, well, there are some certain category, but average people, they only like it.
I would like to say that unfortunately at the moment, it's not our children in the bedroom, it's everybody's children now on the street, and they are there. I mean, they are there, what we have seen on the screen. So I can't believe now any family can be, you know, just watching it like a sort of film about somebody, not anymore.
When Soviet viewers watch this, do they blame each other as the family unit? Do they blame socialism, Jim?
I think they probably blame the family unit. I'm not sure that they blame socialism as a doctrine. I mean, I think that would be perhaps too high flown.
Well, didn't it do everything for them? Isn't this what they're saying these days? That it didn't encourage people to think for themselves,
well,
or act
that may be where I could
independently?
take up what Lena was saying just now. I'm sure the reason why many young people don't do things for themselves is that they expect it to come from somebody else. Somebody else will provide. And suddenly people aren't providing anything. There is nothing to believe in. There is no obvious future. They have to do something for themselves. But what? Now that's part of what television also has to explore, to give the young people a chance.
So that was an unmentionable subject in the past. Let's look in the next section at two more of the old unmentionables, the church and the need for charity. Television, you'll notice, is no longer afraid to talk openly about poverty. Some people estimate that there are hundreds of thousands of tramps or bumjee wandering through the country. Let's start with an advertisement for a Soviet-style Children in Need appeal.
Внимание! 24 часа в эфире. 7-8 января 1990 года. Впервые в Советском Союзе. Благотворительная программа «Телемарафон детского фонда». Цель программы – привлечь внимание к бедственному положению детей и собрать средства на создание альтернативной системы защиты детства в Советском Союзе. Для участия в телемарафоне приглашаются политические и общественные деятели, служители церкви различных вероисповеданий. Вы лично, ваша фирма или трудовой коллектив можете перечислить благотворительный взнос на специально открытые счета в рублях и валюте. Дети будут благодарны вам за любую помощь, ведь главное – это доброта. Заинтересованные фирмы...
Вы хотите их делать религиозными людьми? Нет, у меня нет такой цели, я не хочу это навязать. Ну, то есть, как вот обратить там людей. Если бы я ставил такой цель, это плоско было бы, глупо. Я хочу просто дать знания, у людей нет знания.
Soviet television is no longer ignoring the enormous power of religion in the USSR, but often seems to link the church with old age. The following extract is from Village Hour, a program which focuses on life in the country.
Где-то там, за бывшим клубом, была церковь. Сейчас уже место никто точно не помнит. Не осталось от нее ни кирпичика. Туда бы баба Аня еще сходила, собрала бы силы. А так, нет, не выходит из дома, тяжело. И в избе целый день, тоже тяжко. Телевизор, оставленный дачниками на сохранение, они не включают. А на свой так и не скопили. Да что такая судьба этой деревни выпала? И от магистрали недалеко, и лес хороший, и земля есть. И ведь числится она, всеми забытой, за каким-то колхозом. Да только центральная усадьба после последнего укрупнения отодвинулась за 70 километров плохих дорог. И уже сами они по приказу стали уезжать отсюда. Так и вышло, что самый молодой из всех постоянно живущих сейчас в деревне – Лилевкин Анатолий Алексеевич. Но не поэтому все зовут его в деревне коммунистом.
Я искусственный коммунист.
Почему искусственный ты?
Ну, я не коммунист. Просто прозвали так.
А сейчас все. Скупай магазин, что хочешь взять. И печенье, и пряники, и все на свете. Вся жизнь очень хорошая. Ну что, это народ хуже. Народ помирает. А это у нас тогда, может быть, мы ж по сколько годов дожили. У нас и даже никогда гроб не вязали.
Сейчас мух пролететь услышишь.
Да.
На
Видишь,
улицу
как
вечером страшно выходить. Тишина такая.
Да.
Раньше какая
Бывало, наши ребятки на этом пруду вот как
весело у
хватается.
нас. Летом мы еще лежим, а машина, все
Срывали,
У нас еще пироги не испечешь, мука стоит, дрожжи. Надо на вождях где-нибудь их тащить весь.
This next extract is from a current affairs program shown on Leningrad television. It highlights the unexpectedly appalling plight of the bumji, or tramps, the growing Soviet underclass, until now silent and unadvertised.
Один из ленинградских домов, пошедших на капитальный ремонт, место примечательное тем, что местные бомжи облюбовали его, и это одна из их резиденций. При первой же попытке войти в их логово в одном из разоренных домов, они повели себя как осажденные в замке. Из окон полетели кирпичи, доски и старые газовые плиты. Впрочем, защищаться они еще не очень научились, и в большинстве случаев покорно идут в руки ментов, как они выражаются. Бомжи. Жуткое и подлое слово. Отверженцы, бродяги, униженные и оскорбленные. Заобшивившие и оборванные, провонявшие гарью костерков и нечистот, а потом и подвальной грязью. Затравленные, месяцами, а порой годами немытые, больные, озлобленные. Люди, бомжи, советские люди – часть нашего общества. Подсчитать их невозможно, официальные цифры безбожно занижаются. Их десятки тысяч, сотни, быть может, и большая часть их никогда не вернется в общество. Но разговор сейчас не о тех, кто любой ценой желает сохранить свободу от общества. Разговор о трагедии тех, кто не может в него вернуться. Хоть и частые, но слишком краткие репортажи в секундах, кажется, только будоражат и развлекают. Не сделано и не делается ничего. Ничего. Практически никто не дал себе труда задуматься о судьбах униженных и оскорбленных в советском обществе. Никто ничего не предпринял. Их как бы нет. В этой небольшой передаче собран материал, являющийся итогом долгой работы программы над этой темой и поводом для очень серьезного размышления, а возможно и для пробуждения совести нашей, если таковая и есть. Здравствуйте, не пугайтесь. Не пугайтесь, не пугайтесь, я пришел как друг. Садитесь. Садитесь. Сколько лет вы в бегах уже?
1,5 года.
С чего все началось у вас?
А началось с того, что не прописывает.
Вы вышли из мест заключения?
Да.
За что вы были осуждены?
И уже годы. 198 за непрописку.
За непрописку?
Да.
Так сколько же у вас лет бродяжничества получается?
Ну вот как выйду, опять не принимают, а потом опять сажают. 2 подписки опять сажают. А на работу везде отказы. Так.
А первая статья 144 опять была, да?
Да.
Видать,
Так и пошло.
карман?
Да. Да, было. Угу.
С точки зрения, вот где больше всего несчастных и обиженных сейчас в сегодняшней России?
Это в больших городах.
Почему?
Ну, потому что больше забирают. А меня тянет в Ленинград, так как я здесь родилась.
Вас выписывают, выгоняют, сажают, вы все равно приезжаете в Ленинград?
И все равно меня тянет в Ленинград. У меня здесь и мать, и отец похоронены. Здесь живет, правда, сестра.
И вы без прописки, никто, ничто. Бомж, приходите на могилу родителей. И что вот на могиле родителей?
Ну что, плачу и все.
Вот.
То есть все-таки надежда остается на то, что в жизни что-то случится и хорошее?
Да что хорошее, только свои руки, свой труд, и все.
А на власть, на справедливость, на то, что общество наше считается справедливым, вы хоть немножечко уповаете?
Да как тут уповать, кто прав? Раньше, конечно, была помоложе, растила дочку.
Вы мне не ответили на вопрос. Надежда у вас есть?
Ну, надежда то, что еще жить, и все. Что еще?
И никакой больше?
Нет.
Этот человек, Елисеев Павел Федорович, старик, с полностью парализованными ногами, вот уже скоро 8 месяцев живет здесь, в действующем туалете парка отстоя вагонов. Мимо него проходят по своей нужде люди, а он все сидит и сидит, ждет, когда ему принесут еды. Он изгнан из своей квартиры соседями, он не бомж, прописка есть и есть паспорт. Возможно, в том, что общественный туалет стал ему, калеке, домом, есть и его вина. Но за 8 месяцев за него, безгласного и парализованного, в нашем замечательном обществе за него не вступился никто. А как вы здесь спите, простите?
А вот это матрасе здесь. У меня ноги не ходят. Нога не ходит никому. Ноги не ходят.
Что вы едите?
Когда что? Когда мой придет, когда кто?
А как вот сейчас вы в приемнике распределителей? Сейчас, в общем, тепло тут, светло и даже кормят чем-то. А
Да,
как же вы живете, когда вы не в приемнике распределителя?
Бутылки выручали пустые.
Вот так вот парализованной
А
рукой?
я тогда не была. Парализовала меня в октябре после бесплодных поисков работы. Вот у меня уже не лимитную, на лимитную прописку не берут. Значит,
Что вы умеете делать? Кто вы по профессии?
строитель,
Строитель.
штукатур, маляр.
А
лепит.
дальше-то что делать?
Сейчас жду путевки в дурдом.
Почему?
Ну, в дом инвалидов.
И все?
И больше ничего, никакой перспективы. Если бы я была местная, я бы имела право, как инвалид первой группы, на жилплощадь. Но я родилась не здесь.
Но жить-то дальше надо.
Что делать? Дочь у меня 18 лет, она в общежитии прописана. Куда она меня не возьмет?
Не отказывается от матери, нет?
Нет, конечно, но мне некуда мне взять.
Считаете ли вы наше общество все-таки справедливым?
Нет, давно не считаю. Живет тот, у кого неправедными деньгами карман набит. И подхалимы живут.
Считаете ли вы, что есть надежда у страны стать человечнее, добрее?
Не вижу выхода никакого. Можно вообще-то, если революция другая будет. Перевернуть все перевернуть надо с верхушки. И законы наши гуманные надо. В общем, надо соблюдать Конституцию. У нас есть законы хорошие, но они не соблюдаются. Где вот это наше право на труд, на жилье? Есть у нас такая статья в Конституции?
Да, вот есть же эта статья Конституции,
Да.
что каждый гражданин все
Имеет право
на жилье.
Да, и на труд. По специальности, там, по склонностям, по призванию.
Чего от жизни ждете?
Смерти.
Страна помогла вам.
Вот видите, дала нары.
Нары?
Да.
И все?
И все.
Что еще хорошего увидели вы в жизни?
Ничего, наверное.
А теперь помирать?
Больше нет выхода.
Больше что?
Выхода нет больше.
Вот, пожалуй, и все. Прибавить к этому нечего, мне, по крайней мере. Прибавить может и должен лишь тот, кто в силах изменить хоть что-то в жизни этих граждан Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.
Jim, by anybody's standards, that was pretty powerful, depressing television. I could hear Lena sighing through a lot of it. Weren't they wallowing a little heavily in it?
Wallowing, I think, yes, but this is probably an antidote, maybe even a very necessary antidote to all the years of the ever onwards, comrades, upwards and forwards propaganda about the building of communism. Now suddenly they realise that they've left themselves with a heavy underclass that aren't being looked after, that society has in effect swept under the carpet.
Kostya, necessary?
Yes, well, actually our state is taking everything, all the profits of your life to itself, and it has to give something back to people.
We had the reporter there saying, we have to do something about this. Is it necessary to actually point that out, or wouldn't people be able to work that out for themselves?
I think it's necessary to do something about it.
Huh?
It is.
That's surprising, Lena.
You know, Tim, what I want to say, Costa is saying that he had to blame our society, but when I was watching it actually, I felt myself partly guilty. I have never thought myself about these people, never.
Did you know they existed?
Well, as a matter of fact, we always was taught that these homeless people are only a sign of a capitalist world.
Well,
and
you were told that continually,
we were told that,
you?
and actually I was now walking along High Street Kensington when I'm happy to leave. I see quite a lot of these people in the night staying on the street. But what I want to say, it was really a shock when we discovered that in our society we have the same people, we have the same problem, and nobody ever cared about them. So I'm not going to blame anybody, I blame myself. And this should be a position of everybody. If you're not blaming yourself, then who is actually society? Who is actually a government? Who is actually a country? We are the society. We are the people. And if we are not asking from us anything, who is going to do it instead of us? This is my position.
Kostya, you didn't look as though you agreed with
it. It's have to be some social service, definitely social service. Because in capitalist state, for example, when people are responsible for themselves, but in Soviet Union, people, the state doesn't allow to care about yourself. They're saying that we'll look after you, and people relaxing.
Right, the reporter said something should be done. What do you think, in the Soviet conditions that now exist, can be done from your point of view? You're obviously somebody who feels about this very deeply. What can you do about this situation yourself?
For example, I think that our government is doing a lot now. We are giving this a sort of Sunday and Saturday dinners free for these people. You know, that they come and have their hot food.
Yeah, but that's not very much, is it?
This is the first step. We can't do everything now. I mean, you can't do everything from the first day. I mean, this is first step, and also this first